Welcome back to Native Honor Hours. What is this, our second week in a row?
I know.
My name is
Unusual
Edwin
for her.
Dehaus.
Unusual. Hi, I'm Cindy Krafka, back for the second week in a row.
Is it second week in a row? Did we go on last week?
Yes, we did.
Wow. What's gotten into us?
Well, I'm always ready. It's you that's so busy.
Please don't even throw that out there.
Some of us need a little advance.
Makeup.
If you have to do hair and makeup, you've got to have at least a day in advance. You two can't be bopping.
I'm losing my hair and makeup won't help, so it really doesn't matter.
Oh, see, you're so cocky when we're not sitting side by side doing the show.
I didn't say you were losing your hair. I said I'm losing my hair.
You know, no, you're not. You've got a good head of hair for an old guy.
That's because we film from the front. Now, if we take a picture from behind, it's a whole nother story.
Most of us look better from the front than the behind.
You know what? Kenny's back there chewing, shaking his head like, yep, pretty bald back there.
Hey, as long as you got it in front, you're good. Plus, you look good in hats, so you could go with the fedora.
Yeah, I know. I'm always growing it out too, so I can go like this, comb it back like that, cover up that patch. Maybe
you should do one of those things where you keep the sides short and grow this part long. Then you could do the man bun over it.
Well, I couldn't do a mohawk because it would just stop right back here, and I wouldn't.
Not the mo, but not the hawk.
Not the hawk. So.
Well, today is Missing and Murdered Indigenous Day. It's a really important day for Native Americans. Both Kenny and I were looking up numbers, and the last numbers actually printed were in 2016, and it was 5,700 women, and then they lost count. My question is, how many enough is going to be enough before somebody starts to pay attention? Those are sisters, daughters.
I think people are some people are paying attention. It's not like it was before.
It is getting better. It really is. But it's something that we need to keep putting, not just on Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Day. It's something we need to keep at the forefront. We women need to demand that the government do more to help find these women. I was looking, only 27% of these women get on the DOJ list. They say it's the problems with reporting between the tribes and the federal government, blah, 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 blah. I think the problem is just nobody cares about these Native women except us Native women and men who care about these kids, these women that are just disappearing, and they're disappearing in really large numbers. Every day there's another murdered or missing girl on Facebook, and you know, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking as a mother, a grandmother, an aunt.
I do have to say, in regard to the lack of communication between feds and tribal government, that is real.
It is.
There is a huge disconnect in terms of the communication regarding, you know, prosecution of even major crimes. So if there's a breakdown in, you know, the communication and the cooperation between tribes and the FBI, federal government, I think that's across the board. So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of trying to bridge the communication and collaboration between tribal and federal, and also state law enforcement agencies. So there's a lot of blame to go around. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. You're correct. I think there are groups and agencies, you know, making efforts to do this. As you know, just the fact that we're recognizing it today, and I'm not saying that this is, you know, is gonna solve it. All I'm saying is that there is getting to be recognition, and you're right. We need to address it. I'm just saying it's not. Things are, I think, improving, not as fast as obviously we want them to improve, but I think by the mere fact that, you know, we're talking about this and addressing this, and there's a recognition of issues and problems. Now we need to get down and actually addressing those issues, and it is going to take federal, tribal, cooperation, and dollars. There needs to be dollars involved in terms of, law enforcement, in terms of getting the mechanisms in place that assist law enforcement in tracking and in enforcing and prosecuting these cases. So there's still much to be done, and I think, at the very least, we're moving in the right direction.
Well, I'd like to take a second to read what the president said. He issued a proclamation on missing and murdered Indigenous women. For generations, Indigenous persons, including American Indians, Alaska Natives, and Native Hawaiians, have been forced to mourn a missing or murdered loved one without the answers and support they deserve. On Missing or Murdered Indigenous Persons Awareness Day, we remember these victims and their families and commit to working with tribal nations and Native communities to achieve justice and healing. The federal government has an obligation to ensure that cases of missing or murdered women are met with swift and effective action. My administration is fully committed to investigating and resolving these cases through a coordinated law enforcement response, as well as intervention and prevention efforts. We are also dedicated to researching the underlying cause of this violence and working with Native communities to address them. The safety and well-being of all Native Americans continues to be a top priority for my administration. That is why during my first year in office at the first White House Tribal Nations Summit, I issued an executive order directing federal agencies to improve public safety and criminal justice for Native Americans and to address the crisis of missing or murdered Indigenous people. This includes implementing a coordinated federal law enforcement strategy that supports tribal and other local law enforcement efforts. It also strengthens prevention, early intervention, and survivor services while improving data collection, analysis, and information sharing. For far too long, justice for Indigenous communities has been elusive. We must improve our investigations to resolve missing or murdered cases while supporting victims and their families. Towards that aim, the Department of Justice is working closely with tribal nations to develop regionally appropriate guidelines for these cases. The Department of Justice has created a dedicated steering committee to oversee and coordinate this critical work, including outreach service liaison for the federal criminal cases in Indian country. This March, I signed into law the Violence Against Women's Reauthorization Act of 2022. This important law expands special criminal jurisdiction of tribal courts to cover non-Native perpetrators of sexual assault, child abuse, stalking, sex trafficking, and assaults on tribal law enforcement officers on tribal lands, and supports the development of a pilot project to enhance access to safety for survivors in Alaska Native villages. My administration understands that Native people, particularly survivors of violence, know what's best for their communities to feel safe. That is why we must work hard, hand in hand with tribal partners through each phase of the justice system to create solutions that are victim-centered, trauma-informed, and culturally appropriate. Our nation's failure to address this ongoing tragedy not only demeans the dignity of each Indigenous person who goes missing or is murdered, it undermines the, I can't read anymore. But I also would like to point out, have we seen any of this?
I was going to comment when you were done. That all sounds pretty good. I just, I'm in the thick of all of this, and I haven't seen it yet. And they talk about collaborating with the FBI and tribal. I mean, it is probably my biggest concern.
When has the federal government ever dealt well with tribes and their federal jurisdiction? I mean, when has the federal government ever attempted in any way, shape, or form to put natives first? Have they ever?
I was going to say, Cindy, the biggest issue I have is even on cases that you think the Fed should be there. Mm-hmm. It takes a while for them to either investigate and then and then they don't share information. This is an ongoing problem. They don't share information with tribal law enforcement and prosecution, nor the court systems. And so what happens is the tribal courts and tribal law enforcement get left holding things, trying to figure out, and the FBI, when they come in, if they come in, you know, they don't share information because for numerous reasons that they give us, they don't share it unless at the last minute they say, well, we're going to take it or we're going to decline it. But up to that point, I don't see it, and it needs to improve. You know, they talk about, you know, the part about tribal courts being able to enforce jurisdiction over non-Indians involving, you know, this issue. There's only a handful of tribal courts that are doing this. That's because the law makes it pretty difficult for tribes to be able to replicate what is happening on federal courts. I mean, I give you an example. We had the hardest time getting a prosecutor up in our tribal court system. We have a hard time getting attorneys to come and represent people or to come work, and it's a challenge. And when the federal government is saying, okay, tribes, we'll let you have, you know, this type of jurisdiction, but your court has to have A, B, C, D, and your juries have to be, you have to amend your code to allow this. You have to make sure that there's this, and we don't have those types of resources. And it's I would say rather misleading when they say, well, you know, we're authorizing, you know, jurisdiction, tribal courts have jurisdiction over non-Indians. When it comes to this matter or these types of cases, it's just very few. Not one tribal court in Nebraska is doing this. And last I heard, maybe 30, and that was up from initially after the first 3 to 5 years, there were only 3 or 4 that were handling it. So it's been tough. Sorry. It's been
Ed.
No. See, that's another thing. Now that I'm back on the bench, I can't put my phone on silence anymore. I'm essentially on call 24 hours.
Well, so, you know, I would think if they were really serious about it, why wouldn't they call the tribal judges and the tribal attorneys to Washington, D.C. to sit down with someone and work this all out? It's like they say they want to, like the federal government want to do, but it looks like they're making a decision about what they should do with once again, not involving the tribal lawmakers, the tribal judges. The ones who are actually going to be dealing with this should have a bigger say in how these cases are handled. There should be a way for the tribes to hold the federal government liable when they don't come in.
That's hard. That's hard.
I know.
And that's part of the problems that we're dealing with. But I hope that things get better. And I've seen some improvement. There's been things that are happening that it's not happening quick enough. But at least, and this doesn't provide much. It's sort of a lame excuse, but you know, we're getting better. I mean, but when you look at where we started, that's probably not saying much.
And tell that to a mother, you know, tell that to a grandmother.
Yeah, I recognize that, Cindy. I recognize whatever I say, you know, is meaningless to a family that has lost one of their loved ones. So well,
the good news is, though, there's a lot of natives that are stepping forward with this. There's a lot of coalitions being formed. There's a lot of lobbyist groups coming up with this issue. So maybe if we press hard enough, something will change. But it all depends on the regime. You know,
that's another thing. You have to deal with, you know, the politics of this as well, because there are certain factions in politics that are saying this isn't it's not as big an issue as you make it out to be. You're carving out special funds for you're doing things. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
There are
Well,
factions
do you
that
think a lot
block.
of the problem too is not all the judges on the reservations are Native? Do you think they're less likely to be as concerned with murdered and missing Indigenous women as a Native judge?
I'm not going to cast aspersions on the judges that work in the tribal court system. I think the judges,
That's my job.
the judges that I work with, I don't think you can, say that they don't care or this isn't a concern of theirs. So,
well, and we could take care of this too. We could have more Natives becoming attorneys and judges. We need to step up too. If we want to fight the federal government, we better be educating Natives to understand the federal government. Trying to get Natives to understand how the federal government even works. You may want this, but it has to go through this committee, and then it has to go to the Senate, and then it could be kicked back out. It's the federal government is such a quagmire. Until we learn to negotiate it and navigate it, it's going to continue to step on us. And it does. The federal government steps on Native Americans.
One of the biggest issues is trying to explain the jurisdictional checkerboard that makes it difficult for law enforcement to collaborate and to prosecute, and just understanding the court system. Sometimes understanding what the court system can and cannot do. A lot of this, it doesn't make it to the courts because law enforcement, there's questions about who has the authority to even investigate and who does investigate and what cases do they bring. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen.
And how severely overtaxed the tribal police are. Rosebud is huge. It takes the tribal police hours to get to you when you need them. We also need to address a lot of those things. If we're concerned about defunding the police, how about we try funding the federal government? How about we try funding the tribes more so they can hire more policemen? There's a lot that just makes me shake my head. And the sad thing is, a lot of these women are disappearing along the pipelines. When the pipeline comes, the numbers of women that disappear go up. Nobody looks at them.
There's all types of issues, collateral issues that fall into play here. But from the standpoint of today, we're recognizing that it's we appreciate the efforts of those that are making sure that this doesn't get swept under the rug,
and send prayers to the family
that it gets addressed.
Suffer. We can send prayers. We can send prayers for healing for these families that are suffering. I can't imagine if my daughter just disappeared. I can't imagine. I literally don't know if I could live. And over 5,000 of mothers had to worry about that in 2016. God knows how many. And the reporting system is not great.
I agree with you, but hopefully today we take a minute and at least recognize what's happened and hopefully what we can do in the future.
And give our support to the families and support to anybody who is willing to put this on the front burner. Because it's not, and I'm not saying it's just Native women. There's other women that go missing, yes. We just are proportionately a large number in that group for a lot of reasons.
All right, well, do you have anything else for us today?
Oh, I have a knucklehead with a capital K.
It's not hard to find knuckleheads out there. Who do you have?
I was on Twitter, and gubernatorial candidate Jim Pillen proudly posted that he has Governor Stitt's endorsement. Governor Stitt of Oklahoma, the Indian hater. And I don't even feel bad saying that because nothing he has ever done has been any help to the Native nations. In fact, he's one of the ones trying to fight McGirt. So if Pillen's thrilled to get his endorsement, perhaps the natives in Nebraska better wake up and start getting ready to vote.
Well, the
Because
ironic thing about that is Stitt is enrolled Cherokee.
which makes it even worse. And when he dances across the Milky Way, there's going to be some ancestors waiting for him with few questions. But it literally shows how bad things are getting. If a few of the gubernatorial candidates get in, it's going to be a very hard time to be Native in Nebraska, just like it is in Oklahoma and just like it is in South Dakota. I'm saying the access of evil people.
Actually, there's another Nebraska candidate for governor who has a billboard with the namesake of our Knucklehead of the Week award. Kristi Noem endorsed him, and he's saying it was I think the sign said "Great minds think alike," supporting this particular candidate. But so you have Stitt that's endorsing one candidate and Noem that's endorsing another candidate.
And since when did governors start endorsing candidates for other gubernatorial races? Have I just not paid any attention, or is this a fairly new phenomenon?
In this day and age, politics has changed, and you know that.
It's time for the young ones to step up. It is time for the young. This is going to be their world. If we as Native people think 7 generations ahead, there's 2 ways it can go. In 7 generations, the federal government could have effectively wiped us off the face of America.
Our young people, they don't vote as a block. They don't vote.
Well, I don't understand why. I was raised in a political family. My dad was Republican, my mom was Democrat, and they fought constantly. My mom would put the Democrat sign in the yard, and dad would come home and take it down and put up the Republican sign. So for us, politics was just, dinner talk. And so we were always taught how important the vote is. But these college kids don't understand how much power a governor has, I don't think. I don't think that they see it affecting their lives. But a lot of what's going on in the federal government right this minute is really going to affect lives in the future.
I've asked my students on numerous occasions about various political topics that have that dominate the news cycle, and very few of them follow it.
I know.
They don't read news. They don't read newspapers. They don't they don't watch news TV. They don't do that. They just they have their own little things that they do, and that's it. They don't follow.
Well, if it's not on Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat, it's not happening. And all those algorithms point you to your kind. If
you don't even know what an algorithm is.
Yeah, I do. I will have I do. Because I've been kind of watching it with this Elon Musk buying Twitter thing and what the algorithms say. When I sign on, I see more blind tweets from people that I agree with and that are on my side. I don't see the tweets except from Jim Pillen, because I follow him because I'm a politically responsible person.
I don't even know what a Bitcoin is.
I don't either. Now, see, we're in the dark, Gramps.
Algorithm, Bitcoins, come on, we don't know what we hear them. I don't even know what data is. I ever hear people say,
well, algorithm is like
data.
Once they know your age and where you live, it tailors your ads.
You're in the system.
What you click on and what you go visit, it tailors what you see to what you're clicking on.
Okay, so who is your knucklehead? Was it Stitt or Pillen or both?
Both. Let's just put them all together. I mean, Herbster is no better.
Well, he's the one that has Kristi Noem's.
I know. So could we just, for the rest of today, call it the axis of evil? Stitt, Pillen, Noem, Herbster. Let's just pull them all around in there. Well, because you can pick out one that's worse because they're identical.
The main issue I have with those candidates is that, as I've said before, previously on the show, that all of them are vowing to ban components of critical race theory, which essentially will alter the way.
Ted has been very, very successful doing it in Oklahoma.
So there's a number of things that are happening that if we can explain to our young kids. But let me give you. I'm going to go with some Indians of the week.
Okay.
My students who work with Omaha Public Schools, Omaha Nation Schools. We went up and the other day, Tuesday I think it was, and we flew drones and we went and it was just really cool. It was a cool experience. The kids were excited about it.
Isn't it great to be with kids?
Yeah, the applications that are involved, and I saw some kids, just the look on their faces when they actually got to fly them this time instead of watch somebody else. Man, they got into it, and it just tells me that our youth are just hungering. They're just hungry for opportunities to expand and do things that are different and are cool, and I was really happy to see, the ones that most of them, went out and flew the thing and were pretty happy. But there's a couple that were pretty shy and didn't want to do it. But for the most part, everybody got the little throttle and was flying it around and was able to land it or take off or fly it around the. They have a 7-acre garden up there, and they're flying around and it was pretty cool. So my Indians of the week, my Native Indigenous centered education students, Omaha Nation students, they did a great job in expanding their horizons and trying new things. So that was fun to see. And
well, it almost kills me to say something good about you. Literally, I'm having pain in my stomach because I have to, but you are amazing in that sense. Never once did I bring you a project
in that sense, Kenny,
that you didn't show up when my very first powwow. You were there from the minute it started until an hour or two after it was gone. Every project I've come to you and said, I want to do this, you have spearheaded and found a way, as long as it was for the good of the students. I brought you students that I was having trouble with, Eric Sherman, and you took over. You put the students first, and I've always admired that about you, and it's what's made you a good partner, because I know I backdoored you into this drone project.
Well, kind of, sort of, but I like I said, we tried them in my class during the pandemic, and I just thought that that could be something that we could
grow and expand with. It could be
fly with.
Ooh, come fly with me.
No, but I think our time's up. Kenny once again is waving that one finger at us, and
well, thanks a lot. Maybe we'll surprise you and be back next week. You never know.
You never know. Could go 3 weeks in a row. We'll see. Anyway, we'll see. Hopefully, we'll have some other things to talk about, and it'll be fun.
Have a good week.
We'll see you next week.